It's been 3 years since the last LDP presidential election. This means that the seat of the Prime Minister is up for grabs again. This time around, the current Prime Minister Kishida has announced that he will not run for re-election. There are multiple reasons for this. Firstly, there are the atrocious poll numbers, and for reasons that I will explain in another video, within Japanese politics it is preferable for a Prime Minister to resign or not run again in order to preserve the party's precarious position in the Diet. This is because they cannot risk losing the supermajority by running a very unpopular candidate. Secondly, the recent local election has showed a horrific performance for the LDP, losing key elections and creating a slight possibility of a loss of supermajority in the Diet. Thirdly, the corruption scandal has shaken up the entire foundation of the LDP, and for the same reason, Kishida's response was to do a cabinet reshuffle. Through this action, the Seiwa faction has lost a lot of key administrative positions, and this makes it seem like a direct attack towards the opposition. The other action that Kishida undertook was an attempt at dismantling the faction system within the LDP. This system allowed for power block voting, and especially under Abe, Seiwa-kai had a near complete monopoly on power through this. This attempt partially succeeded, as three factions, the Kochikai, Kishida's own faction, the Nikai, a smaller faction, and the Seiwa-kai, who, since Abe died, was without a proper leader, got dismantled. This, however, did not fully succeed, and it is my interpretation that former faction members will vote much the same way even if the factions themselves are dismantled. Not to mention that there are two other factions still in defiance. Now let us go through each of the candidates running this time and what their strengths and weaknesses are. First of all, Takayuki Kobayashi, literally who. Second, Ishiba. His biggest problem is his inability to form a government. He does not have the support of many factions, or in fact any factions. At one point he had a small faction of his own, but he has since gone solo. Sanae Takaichi. She is a controversial figure, but with high support from the Seiwa faction and being Abe's choice, she has a lot of popular support, although maybe not a lot of institutional support. Shinjiro Koizumi. He does not have support from many factions and is somewhat unpopular, but he is Kishida's choice. On the economy, he seems to support the trend of the Kishida faction in fiscal policy, which is contrasted by opposition from the Seiwa faction. Konotaro is a typical conservative, and unfortunately for him, he is just not popular enough, but he does have the support from the Aso faction. Motegi. He has the support from his own faction, the Heisei faction, but with low numbers and support, he has little chance in the long term. Now, when considering the Diet vote, it is important to note the faction's current standing as best can be determined right now. First of all, for the active factions, the Shikokai under Taro Aso has 56 members, the Heisei-kai under Motegi has 53 members, and the shadow factions have been dismantled are the Seiwa-kai with 98 members, the Kochi-kai under Kishida with 46 members, and the Shisui-kai under the leadership of Nikai and with 78 independents. Now, if we are to categorize them ideologically, the Shikokai and the Heisei-kai would be the conservative factions, the Seiwa-kai and the Shisui-kai would be the nationalist faction, and the Kochi-kai would be the liberal faction. Now, the way that the president of the LDP is elected is through a two-round election process. In the first round, the vote is split between LDP members of the Diet, thus paying party members equally. If any candidate wins a majority in the first round, then he will automatically win the election. If there is a second round, the Diet members vote again, and the 47 prefecture chapters of the LDP get 1 vote each, determined upon the first round of party votes in each prefecture. The candidate who gets the most votes in total wins. Now for the first round of the Diet vote, the expected outcome that I am predicting will be that Sanae Takaichi will pick up former Seiwa Kai support, Ishiba will pick up a lot of the independents and maybe former Nikai members, Konotaro will pick up the Shikokai support, and Koizumi will pick up the Kochikai support, Motegi of course with his own faction. And such a vote will look something like this. I also have a small slice of the pie for others, which represents 7%, 27 votes. But as you can see, the most support, simply from the Diet vote, comes from Sanae Takaichi and Ishiba. This gives them a lead when they might be underperforming in polls. Now we need to add in the votes coming from the dues main LDP members, and we do this based on the polls, which looks something like this. Now the polls themselves have a little problem, and that is that there is a large amount of undecided voters, and these I have decided to simply categorize under others rather than assigning them proportionally, meaning that in this example Ishiba gets a large percentage of the vote, second would be Koizumi, and third would be Sanae Takaichi. But the most votes are under others, and depending on how those get distributed, they will make a large impact on who wins the first round. And when we combine the two votes, this is how I expect the first round of voting to come out, with Ishiba leading with 28%, Sanae Takaichi second with 19%, and Koizumi Shinjiro with 18%. Now again, due to the large amount of undecided voters and independent Diet members, there is still a large 17%, 126 votes which are undistributed, and depending on how these allocate themselves, it can change considerably who will win. Now one thing to note as of very recently is that Koizumi Shinjiro has had a poor performance both in the debates and in public communication. This leads to a fall of his support and Takaichi gaining at his expense. Therefore, all things considered, out of the three leading candidates, that being Ishiba, Koizumi and Takaichi, more than likely Takaichi will overcome Koizumi and they will compete in the second round. When it comes to the second round of voting, Ishiba, I predict, will get most of the support from the independents, the Kochikai and the Shikokai, and Sanae will get most of the support from the Shisuikai, the Seiwakai and the Heiseikai. When we add those numbers together, the chart looks something like this, with Ishiba gaining 180 votes and Sanae getting 190 votes. But of course the key in determining who will win here is the 47 votes from the prefectures. Determining how those votes are distributed is nearly impossible, therefore it is largely based on, frankly, luck, how much support each candidate gets in the prefectures. In any case, this will be a close election. Now in conclusion, fundamentally these internal elections do not happen through electoral analysis like general elections, but with informal alliances and backroom deals. Hence why I conclude that while Sanae Takaichi may singularly have the most popular support, If the more conservative factions decide to set aside their differences or consider her enough of a threat, then they will be able to get together and support Ishiba and win. All this said, at this point, since it is the most crowded election in Japanese history, I think it is fair to say that the LDP is a bit unorganized, and I will therefore consider Ishiba more likely than not to win. All this being considered, all that each candidate really needs to do is to work out a backroom deal with one or two other factions, and they will get majority. Such things are not necessarily able to be predicted, but as things stand right now, this is my prediction. Correct me later, and watch out for my next video when the Prime Minister does get elected on September 28th. Thank you for watching.